Go ahead and take a seat. Biggest one, don't tap on the tables. Anywhere. One of the ends, fine.
Tap on the table.
Don't tap on the tables. Don't
I talk with my
don't
hands a
touch
little
the
bit.
mic.
I talk with my hands a little bit, so I'll try not to
Okay.
hit the table.
Hey, this is Paul Schock with the SCIPP program, and at the Restoration Community Church, we're doing our live broadcast at community events and topics. And today the topic is drug addiction and drugs. And what I would like to do is have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go around and I'll ask another question.
My name is Kyle Morgan. I'm a recovering addict. Have been most of my life, so happy to be here.
My name is Courtney Trankel. I am also a recovering addict. I work at the Gibson Center for Behavioral Change and LaCroix Church.
I'm Jim Haney, a police officer here in Scott City. I'm a narcotics officer.
Now if you guys can actually just go down the line, just tell me about your experiences that pretty much turn your life around, or your experiences of making things happen for yourself finally.
All right, so I can tell you about an experience about a year ago that changed my life for the better once again, but even better because I've been in recovery before and I fell off. But Mr. Haney down here, about actually exactly 1 year ago, almost to the hour, happened to kick my door in, and of course I had some things in my house that put me in jail. I went to jail for about 6 months, and that's led me to be here. But that changed my life dramatically, more than any other time before. I mean, Haney and the chief here in town, Riggs, Chris is what I call him. He's my neighbor. Has went dramatically out of their way to help me out and give me a second chance. I work for the city now, and I couldn't be happier with the way things are going in my life. I could go on and on and get into more, but yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now
That's
today.
great.
So.
Okay, so I was a 25-year active addict, and career criminal. I started using when I was 14 years old. I got sober when I was 39. And ironically enough, it was after a high-speed chase through this town, right over this bridge right out in front of us. And I ended up going to prison for trafficking drugs. And I did 2.5 years in prison. And it was in the Scott County Jail that I had an encounter with Jesus that just changed my life. And I've never looked back, and that was, it'll be 7 years in March.
That's amazing.
Good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Basically, how I got into being a narcotics officer, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of violence and drugs, and I developed a hatred for it because I saw what it did to kids. I saw what it did to families.
Yeah.
So when I did my time in the military, when I became a police officer, it was one of those things I really poured myself into because I saw that as the best chance to change a kid's life. If I can, like I talk to Kyle, I truly, every person I interact with, I want to see them come out the other side better. A lot of them don't believe me when I tell them that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that is my
I
true
didn't at
goal.
first.
Right? And we talk about him all the time. Sometimes it's real depressing because you see so many that don't come out the other side. And whenever we finally see somebody that does, man, it really fills that heart back up and gives us that strength to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I work in treatment now, and I can see it from the opposite side now. You know, like I just want to transmit through osmosis to the women that I work with how much better it is and how much beautiful life can be if you just
Yeah.
give yourself a chance.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, it's so much better on this side of things
Mhm.
versus, you know, just the stress and the craziness and the just the craziness of how it really drags your whole life down, and it's like you don't know how to get out of it in that, you know, in that moment. But when you're, you know, when you finally got your head clear, you can sit back and you look and you can just be like, you know, see how retarded, you know what I mean, your mind frame really was, you know, even, but you know, when you're in that, you don't realize, you know, like how bad, you know, because you just think, you know, you get into that mind frame when when you first, you know, get in there, it's like you kind of understand. You're like, okay, no, you know, I don't want to do this again or whatever. But then you continue going down that path, and it's like
It becomes normalized.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't realize, you know what I mean, what you really look like and what you're really doing, you know, because you rationalize it in your head,
Sure.
and it's like, you know, people see, you know, these drug addicts out on the side of the road, excuse me, or you know, or whatever, and you just see these people, and it's like people are like, oh, they're just a piece of crap, whatever. But I see somebody suffering, you know what I mean? I see
Yeah.
somebody that needs help, but granted, a lot of times they won't always take it or be open to it. Sometimes you gotta throw them in jail for 6 months.
Hey,
You know what I
prison,
mean?
prison changed my life. I get it.
Hey, and you know, I've been, you know, 13 years ago, I went to prison. You know, before all this happened, you know, here recently, you know, I've been in recovery for 13 years. You know, I went to prison 13 years ago, back in 2009. Back in 2009, I went to prison, and you know, and that was, it was a lot easier back then. My kids were really small, and you know, me and my wife hadn't been together that long. But this little 6 months in jail, man, whew, that was the hardest thing I ever done in my life. Being away from my wife and my kids, and just, man, that was.
How old are your boys now?
They're 16 and actually will be 15 in 4 days. Yep, on the 19th, Trey will be 15 and Kyle Jr. 16. And then I have 3 older kids as well. I got, believe it or not, I have 2 getting ready to be 21-year-olds and a 17-year-old, and then I got Kyle and Trey, which are 16 and gonna be 15. So
That's great.
yeah, got a lot to live for. That's for sure.
One of the things I actually would like to ask is that, in some ways, Jimmy, you've already alluded to it, is that when you grew up, you were all around it. And I know that most people in their families, they try to isolate the whole idea of even there's addiction or if there's a problem out there.
Yeah.
Because they want to safeguard their kids and their family. How do we actually bring out the subject or effectively educate the kids?
Well, go ahead.
Good. So I'll try to make this kind of quick. Backstory: same situation. Grew up in a household addicts. So my mom, my dad, my brother. My dad died of hepatitis C. My mom died of an overdose. And that's all I knew growing up was drugs. You know, like from the time I was 9 or 10 years old. We were already smoking pot together. At 14 years old, my dad shoved a needle in my arm, you know. So I've understood, you know, addicts literally my whole life. I've understood addiction and have went through all that. I'm very loud about addiction and people suffering. That's why I was more than willing to come here. Gibson Center. I go there all the time. I'm part of the research study
Good,
at Gibson.
Nice.
And then I see Cindy all the time. You know, it's Gibson's a big part of my life. I've even when I was actively using, I was still going to Gibson all the time, you know,
Yeah.
and dropping dirty, and they're just like, come on, whatever. Anyway, I said I was gonna make this short. So I'm very, very loud about, you know, addiction and addicts and all that with my children. You know, I try to downplay as much as I can, but they have seen Dad go to jail. They have been a part of my, you know, all of it. You know, they you know, they've seen Dad suffer, and they've seen, you know, so what I was getting is I'm very loud about addiction and people that are suffering and need help with my children, you know, because I've went through it, and I've explained to my kids, you know, what my parents went through, what, you know, some of the stuff, you know, I don't get into a lot of it with them, you know, more as they get older, as they can, you know, understand and process it. But, you know, it's one thing that I've been just loud about is to help recovering addicts and support addicts, and you know, I bring that subject up with my kids, and I feel like everybody should, because it's something that every child's gonna face,
Yeah.
whether it's just, you know, somebody putting some pot in their face or, you know, whatever. So it's like, that's just something that I feel like is very important to all
Like-
children.
Talk about people all the time, addiction, it doesn't care how you're raised, doesn't
Nope.
care
No.
what your income level is.
No.
Yep, it's
no.
no respecter of race or
None.
class or
Nope.
education
Because
or
it grabs
job, none of
everybody.
that.
It'll
It'll
grab
lead 'em all up.
anybody
Yeah.
from anywhere.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is also real important is there's so much glorification of the drug world.
Yeah,
Talk to them about addiction and the addicts and
Absolutely.
what that actually leads to, and not, you know, it's not this glorified world. It's a horrible thing
It's
that drags
terrible.
these people down and tears them apart.
It's terrible.
Are
It
there,
rips
are there
lives apart.
things that families can do to help their child or their teenager, that if they're actually dealing with some of these things?
absolutely. I, just like, you know, he said, I recover out loud. I mean, I work at a treatment center, so it's pretty obvious, you know, where I stand on things. But my kids are 26 and 17, and so they witnessed, you know, most of my addiction, their whole lives, up until recently, you know, was witnessing me be a criminal, a drug addict,
Yeah.
incarcerated, in and out of jail, prison for a long time. So if they witness that struggle, they need to witness, you know, the next part, which is where, you know, you can overcome that. And so you need to,
Exactly.
I feel that we need to
Absolutely.
be honest with our kids, 100%. Like my son, last year, a few days after his 16th birthday, had a friend of his that overdosed. He
Yep.
thought he was buying a Percocet off the street, and it was pressed fentanyl. And you know, I've buried a lot of people, my grandparents, both my parents, friends, and when I tell you that funeral was the worst one I've ever been to, it was just awful. And so then I'm left, you know, wondering, what do I do with this? And so I trained my son and some of his friends how to use Narcan, because that's the reality that they live in.
That's the reality of
You never know. I
today's-
mean, that wouldn't have helped in that situation because the boy's mother had found him. But what if next time there's a friend in a school bathroom?
Yeah.
You just never know. We have to be honest and train them, you know, in the right ways to do things.
You know, we had an overdose here, real close to this location, not too far away. Young kid. His friend
Yeah.
raced through town with him in the car to get to his mom's house because he knew he had Narcan at home.
Good.
But I'm sitting there talking to this kid. I'm saying kid, he's 18 years old, and he's sitting there talking. I was like, yeah, I've Narcan 5 of my friends already.
It's so common.
It's,
And
yeah, it's,
It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
it's terrible, man.
Yeah, it
And
is so
It's
common.
just, and that stuff, man, and I can speak from experience, you know, like, man, that stuff ain't, man, it grabs a hold of you so quickly, and it's so much worse than heroin. And, you know, heroin's, you know, that's the, you know,
Horrible.
makes people shiver when you, but it's so much worse than heroin, and I know from experience, it's so much worse than heroin. I mean, it's It's unreal, and
Yeah.
that's the reality of what our children are gonna
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We're,
It's
we're
like
losing a generation to that.
a whole
Absolutely.
generation.
Jim,
It's-
one of the things that I would actually ask off of that, I know that, I mean, a lot of people don't realize, I mean, they might listen to the news, the newspaper, or other things, but they don't realize how effective fentanyl is in our community,
Man,
and how innocent individuals can be affected by it.
Absolutely. I
It-
mean, it is everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
everywhere.
Every small
Yeah.
town,
Yeah.
every little community,
Yeah.
it is
It's-
everywhere. So,
it's-
especially where we're at. So southeast Missouri, we are kind of in a little bubble here. So if you look at overdose deaths and everything, you know, back when we had the heroin epidemic, and then it was
yeah, then it was
methamphetamine.
the meth, and then
So there's always a big bubble right around St. Louis, and then right here where we're at, there's another
Yeah.
bubble
Yep.
right here.
Yep.
And it's going to hit us hard.
Yep.
We're not done burying children.
And, but at the same time, I know that like meth, the biggest thing that people would actually say, hey, the leftover from the cooking is bad for the kids that are actually playing around it.
Yep.
And how do you actually know what's what? But on fentanyl, as far as the effects of families and people, innocent people, is that you can actually accidentally had it sprayed into a grocery store. You could
Yeah.
actually had it, someone else could have it on them.
Yeah,
And
we
all
know.
of a sudden, it gets onto a little kid.
So whenever me and him met a year ago,
Yep.
during the process of handling the evidence, I was not aware of what I had. And I actually got dosed in the process. And it was, now it's easy to say it's funny. I go back and I'm like, hey man, what was this substance? And he tells me, I'm like, oh, okay. And so
Yeah.
we're sitting around typing the report with Narcan sitting on the desk. 'Cause
Because they was messing with the bag, and
Yeah.
and they wasn't aware. You know, it was purple. You know, of course, it's not a common color for
Yeah.
you know, drugs or whatever. It was, or pink, maybe it might have been pink or purple or whatever. And you know, he was like, "Man, what was in that pink bag?" And I was like, "That's fentanyl."
And
he's
it's so scary because it's like not even, you know, what you're talking about, innocent people coming across it. There's also drug users who have no idea that they're
Absolutely.
ingesting it. You know,
Yeah.
like you,
Yeah.
I drug test people at work who are like, you know, if I ask them, what is this toxicology, you know, screen gonna show? And they're just like, oh, I just take some pain pills. And then it comes back with just fentanyl, no opiates in their system at all, just fentanyl. Or they think they're just buying meth and smoking meth, and it comes back with fentanyl in it. You know, it's just, it's crazy that it's so everywhere that it's even in the drugs that you don't think that you're
Yeah,
getting.
like meth. Like, so, probably 5 years ago, when I first came down to this area, get into that story, it's a long story, I ain't gonna get into all that, but I was going to Gibson, and I had been using meth, and they drug tested me, and they were like, why you have, you know, you been doing fentanyl? I'm like, absolutely not. I've not been doing fentanyl. They're
You
like,
didn't even
you
know.
are clearly positive for fentanyl. I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not. They showed me, or actually, no, I argued with them. We took the test again. Yeah, clear as day, fentanyl, and I wouldn't even use it.
Yeah.
I explain that to people all the time whenever I'm dealing with them on the street, and I pick them up and I'm talking to them. I'm like, do you realize how much fentanyl's in the meth here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, and they're like, well, you know, I hear. I'm like, no, it all has it in it.
It's,
Yeah.
it's,
Like you can't buy it without it.
it's ridiculous.
It's everywhere.
It really is everywhere. You know, I'm on the board of the We Do Recover Community Center in Cape Girardeau, and we pass out fentanyl test strips so that, you know, it's a form of harm reduction, so that people who are still using can test their drugs and make sure that there's no
Yeah,
fentanyl
at
in it.
least-
And it's,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people are going to use, unfortunately,
Yeah.
so they might as well be safe about it.
Exactly.
Well, I think the hard thing, though, is, and the realization is, you have something with such power, just a little bit
I know.
can
Tiny.
affect a whole household,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiny bit.
or a whole city. I mean, it's almost like a chemical war.
I forget what town it was. I just watched on the news. Seven different kids, all ended up in the hospital because
I saw that, the candy.
one kid, yeah, one
Mhm.
kid had some gummy bears or whatever and put them in a bag from home. I don't know the story. They said there was 2 people arrested, so I'm assuming whatever kid's
Mhm.
parents, you know, that he just put them in a bag that he found at home, took them to school. Him and 6 of his friends were eating it. They all ended up in the hospital
That's so
for
sad.
fentanyl
So
overdose.
scary.
All because he just put a, you know, he had no
He was
idea.
just a
He
kid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just a
he
kid,
was
Just a kid.
living
He
at home.
He just put some candy in
No,
in a bag to take to school for his friends, and they all
Still-
ended up in the
Still
hospital.
remember one of the first overdoses I worked in Sykes when I was working down there. Get called, go in, this guy's out cold in the bathroom, right? And needle still in his arm, bag of fentanyl,
Yeah.
all over the floor.
Yeah.
A 4-year-old found him.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Because he goes in there, mom's boyfriend's, sleeping in the bathroom. He tries waking him up. He goes and gets his mom. Thankfully, the kid didn't get exposed. to it.
Exactly,
Sometimes
yeah.
I'm looking at him like,
All he
man.
could have done is just step in it or something, you
It
know?
could have been so easy and that kid would be dead.
Mm.
And it's,
And again, just comparison to meth and a lot of the other drugs, that's one drug that just affects everything.
Man,
Yeah.
And could affect innocent people
yeah.
even more
Drugs
so.
just seem to be evolving, like, I mean, and they always have, and I don't know. they
It's like
probably
it's on that
always will.
synthetic epidemic right now. Everything's synthetic, and they want to try and make real drugs better, and it's
So-
making it more deadly and
Mhm.
worse and more addicting, and
So in your experience, Jim, from your knowledge of a lot of the work that you deal with, how can a community work together they're not going to eradicate anything, but work together to make
just
things
slow it
happen?
down, right? As far as on my side, what I like seeing is, one, education, like stuff
Absolutely.
like this, getting everybody
Absolutely.
aware of what's out there.
Mhm.
be
Um,
loud about it.
2, if you see something, say it.
Yeah.
Like, hate to say it, man, how we got turned on to you that day was neighbors going, hey, there's
Yeah.
something going on here.
Yeah, yeah. People in and
And
out.
it, led into an investigation, which thankfully turned somebody's life around.
Absolutely.
Thank God,
Yeah,
huh?
thank God. And that's, I think I said it earlier, 2 weeks before all this happened, I was praying to God that, just to get me off everything and help me, and they would say, be careful what you ask for. 2 weeks later, I woke up in jail and I looked up and I was like, all right, God, here we go.
Jim,
Like,
do you know
yeah.
the percent, how many a week in Scott County overdose? And
Oh, me, I don't even know what the actual numbers of that. You might actually have a better guess on that.
I really don't. I know that, at the Gibson Center, we have the director of nursing who has to do death reports on anyone who's a patient. And they're just, coming in through the roof. They're just so many of them each week. From people that, either were an outpatient client or they just left rehab or detox or whatever and didn't want to pursue services, in a different way. And so, we don't discharge them right away. We try to re-engage them in services. So if they're still active in our system, a death report has to be done. And it's happening so often.
And we usually get it in waves.
Mhm.
And actually, we're kind of hitting one of the, the holidays. Ends up being one of those things, people travel in, or people are trying to deal with extra stresses, because, crazy things like finances and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
heard it was something like 7 per week in Scott County.
Wow.
That'd be very believable.
Yeah.
Cape County is much higher. I can
Oh, yeah.
promise you that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Way higher.
Um,
But
Oh,
the,
schools allow you in, when the officers in to talk to these little kids? Is it like an open door for the?
I know that there's a school resource officer that is there. I don't know what kind of education he does with them, but I'm sure that's something they'd be very open to. They've never
Yeah.
pushed back on us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just went down to New Madrid High School with another coworker during Red Ribbon Week, and we, gave the kids a presentation, and from the clinical side, and as well as from the other side, because I'm currently a peer specialist with Gibson, which just basically means that I'm a clinician with lived experience. So I think that lends some credibility, you know, to kids, like, oh, she might know a little something because she's been there and done that. And I make no qualms about the fact that I was in prison and was a drug addict for 25 years, you know, and that they don't want this life, so.
Yeah, I'm glad about that too. Not that I try to, you know, not that it's something that I'm proud of, but it's something that I want them to know, like,
Yeah,
this is
learn
not
from your
what
pain
you
so they
want.
don't have to.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I tell my children that all the time. I'm like, I've already made every mistake there is. If you just listen to me, I promise you, you're
So-
going to be
so
so
is that-
successful in life. Like, I've done everything wrong. I can tell you how to do it right. I promise.
And sometimes with kids, they'll listen to the opposite.
I know,
Yeah.
and that's what scares me, you know. But
Yeah.
so far,
I don't know if you remember, that was one of the things me and you talked about that night was kids idolize their parents, and they see way more than we ever give them
oh
credit for.
man,
Yeah, they do.
You know, and like we talked about, I still remember that night. You almost teared up talking about it. I was like,
Man.
man, you know,
man,
boys are looking up to you. They're
that's-
looking
yeah,
at you right
yeah,
now.
I'm their
And then-
hero.
And the thing is, we think we're so slick when we're actively using.
Oh,
like,
but
like
we're
we
so
like nobody
not.
can tell, or like no one, like the cops don't have the clue on what's going on. You know, we think we're so slick,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and we're just not. You know, we're not
I was
anything-
blindsided, like, what?
Yeah. So
What
our
do you
kids,
mean?
our
Why
kids
did
are
you
watching
my door
us.
in, you know,
Yeah.
like- oh, exactly, yeah. And the kids are, they know. Trust me, they knew way before Haney or anybody else knew. You know what I mean? Like they're not dumb. The
Yeah.
kids are not stupid. They see what their parents are doing. You know.
So is it actually a different reality for you from one to the other?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's a, you know, it's a different reality, but it's not like, what are the words I'm searching for? I mean, yes, it's, so, you know, I kind of got into my history a little bit. You understand the life and the family I was raised in, you know, going to school when I was a kid, you know, we don't talk about what goes on at home. You know what I mean? That's going to get everybody in trouble. So we don't, you know, so living in that reality to actually coming somewhere like this and actually just speaking about it, you know what I mean, is two different realities.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, because when you're an addict, you know, it's hush hush. Nobody needs to know about it or whatever. To, you know, coming to somewhere like this and speaking out about it, it's definitely two different realities, and it still takes me, you know, different. You know, I'm working for the city now, and I'm working with, you know, the cops and all these guys around here, and I'm going down to PD and I'm helping out and doing stuff down there. You know, of course, it's that's a different, you know, it's a whole different life from what I'm used to. You know what I mean? But it's humbling, and it's definitely, I can't even use the words to describe, you know, what it's been like seeing this side of life just in these past, you know, 6 months. I'm speechless. I don't even know how to explain it.
Invited you in, besides, you know, we have CR here, but for me, it's, you gotta get down to that everyday church. You know, you got 500 people, boy, we came to the church of 5,000. That's where we, I mean, there's people all from the church that don't go to CR. And I've said, everybody needs to be in CR, because someone's hurt or something. Have you been invited to speak, like on Sunday morning, some of these churches?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been, I mean, that's really how I got hired at LaCroix. I was invited by Pastor Ron, you know, to come speak on Alpha, which I'm heavily involved with Alpha. I have been since I got out of prison. You do?
We are Alpha, but we have
Okay, well, I'm actually the Missouri advisor for Alpha Prison Ministry and Reentry. I'm working on getting back into the prisons on the good side of things. They turned me, sorry.
Nancy from our church, they go down south.
Nice.
Every Thursday.
Yeah, I would love to do that, but I just got turned down for the federal prison and the state prison so far. I've been off of parole about a year and a half. I've been out of prison for, it'll be 5 years, well, I've been out of prison for 4 years. So they're still kind of like not letting me in. But yeah, I've spoken at a lot of churches, and it all started with the conversation with Pastor Ron and Alpha, and you know, then next thing you know, I'm working there. Like, if you could have told me 7 years ago I'd be working at a treatment center and a church, I would have said, "You're crazy. Do you know who I am?" You know, but God.
Thank God.
You know,
God is so
that's
amazing.
one of the things, like I was talking to him a little bit about a while ago, is I truly want to see everybody make it out of addiction alive. And
Yeah, me too.
I get people in, you know, our little jail short term, 3, you know, month and a half, and I see them do so good. And I talk to them almost daily, and they're going to change, you know, like, yeah, hey, I feel so
Oh,
much
yeah.
better now.
Yeah.
And then it almost breaks me whenever you see them back on the street, and they want to smile and wave, but they kind of put their head down, and you can just
Yeah.
tell,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
And
I'll
that's
slide back down that. So when you do see somebody make it out, it kind of
yeah,
And
revitalizes that spirit a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
what you described in the sense that your family was actually suppressed things so that you don't bring that out into the schools.
Yeah.
I mean, I see, Jim, you probably see too, and we've talked about it before, is that because the rental situation in Scott City is just so high, that you do have a lot of good percentage of individuals that are actually going to stay for 6 months with the family. They'll take off to another town so that they're not actually being tracked. Or bringing up the issues. There's one of their kids that actually said something at school, so guess what? We got hell to
Uproot and go
Yeah.
somewhere else.
get out of town. So it's hard, I understand, especially in the drugs, dealing with the community, dealing with the suppression. You have families that are homeschooling, and sometimes that's a sign too, because if they're not getting an education, if they're not being tracked as far as that education,
Right.
it affects the kids' generations too.
Mhm.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You know, we've talked about that and a few other things, talking about that generational impact of addiction, violence, just different types of violence. But you don't think about it, you know. You have generation way over here that had a severe drug problem, you know, addiction ran heavily. It could take 2 or 3 generations for those effects to really work their way out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because even if the kids don't fall into addiction, they're still impacted
Exactly.
by what they
Exactly.
experienced,
Exactly.
and then their kids are still going to be impacted
By what their parents
by
went
what
through.
their parents did,
And that's
and it takes generations to get that worked out.
you know, and that's something that my family is or my children, you know, and my family are dealing with. Like I said, you know, me and my brother, we were raised to be drug addicts. You know what I mean? Like literally, we had. I mean, you know, at 9 years old, I was smoking pot with my dad and my brother. By 11, you know, my mom already caved in and was letting me smoke pot. You know what I mean? I'm 10 and 11, and I look at that now, and I look at my 14-year-old. My 14-year-old, you know, he's the same age that I was when my dad shoved a needle in my arm for the first time. And it's like, I look at that, and I'm like,
And how was your
Sorry, I didn't mean-
education as far as going to school and things like that during that time?
you know, you know, kicked out of school, alternative school, and then I was expelled indefinitely. I went to a group home down in New Madrid, and I got my GED down there. They wasn't gonna release me until I got my GED because Perryville School wasn't gonna take me back because I'd already been expelled. How DFS never stepped in and took me from my parents is still, like, I've talked to my counselor that counseled me when I was that age, you know, 13, 14 years old. She actually was counseling my oldest two, my twins, because they lived in Perryville, and I went back with a counseling session with her, and she was just like, I tried so hard to have you taken away from your parents, you know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. I mean, the part of the system generation like that, they develop a scheme if there's actually a warning from any individual coming from the state or the feds coming in. There's a system. The kids are so proper.
game.
They know the
Yeah.
They
game.
know the game.
My kids
Yep.
did.
Yep.
My kids knew the
Yeah.
game automatically. Like,
Yeah.
I remember one time my son got taken from me. It was at school, and they tried to contact me. I wouldn't go meet the guy at the school. I think it was my sister-in-law at the time. She had my son, and she said, "The school called me to go get your son. I don't know what's going on." And so I was like, "Well, it's a wrap. They're not going to give him back." He knew not to say anything because I had taught him that, like shamefully had taught him that. And I skated through the system because I just never went and talked to DFS. And so then, my sister-in-law got like a temporary guardianship until my ex-husband got back from treatment. He got my son and he gave him right back to me. So there's you're right, there's like a system that, a structure within the family, and they know how to work it.
Yeah.
It's so sad, and it's so manipulative, and it's so hard on little kids to grow up like that.
Well, I mean, because no matter what, kids want to be with mom and dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to be with family.
Yeah.
Bad
And
or
so
not,
they
yeah.
learn real quick, well, if I say this, I'm not going, if I tell the truth, I'm not going to get to go
Right.
back to mom. So
Right.
I'm either not going to tell you anything, or I know the line, I know what you want to hear to let me go home.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and we're teaching them at a young age to be
Deceptive.
lying and
Yeah.
manipulative, and we're teaching them that people in authority like police, DFS, were teachers,
Teachers.
whatever, that they are the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're trying to protect our selfish lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a sense of paranoia
Oh, for sure.
and your own suppression.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, it affects the kids' generation that way too.
Yeah.
And that's what they think life is like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And people are like, that
Yeah.
you can't really open up or talk to people that way,
Yeah.
what things are going.
You know,
Jim,
that was always one of the heartbreaking things whenever I do see kids and, I'm in uniform and I can tell the ones that are like, oh, you're the bad guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
I'm
I'm
sure.
like, oh man, like I'm trying to
Hey,
sing
hey,
for the bad
what,
guy, but
right, shortly after, he arrested me, he went to the house and took my boys games, turkey dinner and all that stuff, knowing that I was going to be where I was at and they wasn't going to have much of a Christmas. So, what I mean? I had mad respect for that. That was super cool. You know what I mean? Like,
they're still good
and-
kids, man.
and they are good kids. They really are. And they've been through probably more than the rest of my children have, as far as being because them two are the ones I have with my wife, and so they've been there from day one, and have seen
how,
more than they need to see.
Jim, how much is drugs affected in Scott City? I know it's a hard question.
Oh, so Scott City's better than what we were. For a long time it was kind of the officers we had here were real good at looking the other way. And so it kind of ran rampant for a long time. We've recovered more fentanyl out of Scott City than all the rest of Scott County. But again, it's not because there's so much more of it here, but just we're fighting hard to keep it out.
Are you finding that there's more people moving out because of the situation, or there's more people coming in?
Well, we have a new housing development here in town that's more focused towards lower income. We're still waiting to see the effects of that. But I mean, it's still here. I think for a while, we're going to go through in waves. Whenever we had, 1 month we had 5 search warrants. You couldn't buy drugs in Scott City. My Howard already tried. You had to go to Cape or Sykeston,
Nobody trying to
right?
do nothing.
Everybody was like, "Yep, nope, don't even sell your
Nope.
brother. Don't do it." I was like, "They know, just stop."
Yeah.
But give them a little bit of time to get comfortable again, and you're never going to keep it out of here. That and our biggest problem is we have Cape right up the road here and Sykeston right down the road here, and so there's
Two major
it's always right
hotspots.
down the road. And then we have I-55 where You know, it's a major van going all the way up to St. Louis over to Chicago. Almost every bit of drugs that ever hit Chicago drives right through our little town
Yeah.
at some point in time.
Imagine one of those accidents.
Yeah, you know.
People don't realize that, how prevalent it is.
Yep, it is. It is everywhere, and that's, again, gets back to that educating the kids. You know, we talk about the kids having the Narcan parties,
Yeah.
where they'll intentionally overdose
That's
to see how much Narcan it takes to bring them back.
crazy.
That's so
That's
crazy.
crazy.
And
They,
as
they
a-
see it as a game, you know.
There's an end game to that one, in the sense that
Mhm.
usually, once you have Narcan, you're supposed to go to the hospital to
Yeah,
get it out of your, because it's still in your system.
and that's the scary part. I don't think the kids understand is the life of the Narcan is so short
Yes.
compared to
Mhm.
the fentanyl.
You can overdose again.
Yep. And then, you know, hey, yeah, we had you Narcan me, you brought me back. All right, now I've went home, I've
Yep.
laid down.
Yep.
Nobody's around to see me whenever
Yeah.
I
That's
slip
it.
into it again.
It's over.
I don't
Plus,
know how,
you're also dealing with stuff these days like the xylazine that's in fentanyl, which is like a horse tranquilizer. We've seen, you know, a significant amount of that on UAs at Gibson, you know, lab tested ones, and that's resistant to Narcan.
Yep.
So
Wow.
you're not going to get revived with Narcan with fentanyl with xylazine in it, or meth with xylazine, or anything else like that.
you know,
Wow.
you get bad enough, one's not, you know, one dose of Narcan may not bring them back.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You know, the good news, I think it's important for people to realize, you know, if you're ever out there in a situation or at a party, someone's doing drugs and someone overdoses, call for help. You know, there's a good Samaritan law that says, as a police officer, I show up, you called in an overdose. The drugs that are there, you're not gonna get charged for, they're there to save somebody's life. I'm wrong, I'm gonna take the drugs from you, but I'm not gonna charge anybody with it. You know, don't not call because you're scared of the repercussions. Save the person's life.
Right.
Um,
Educate yourself too. Learn how to administer Narcan. It is super, super easy. We do Narcan trainings at Gibson. There is free Narcan available at the We Do Recover Community Center every single day. You just come in and get some. And the thing about Narcan is that it's completely safe. Like, I could squirt some in my nose right now. It's going to do nothing to me because I'm not in an opiate overdose.
And I think also, I've heard some crazy rumors, like talking to some of the kids. I tell them, like, you know, keep Narcan in your car. It's like, oh, you can't. It's a prescription only. I've had cops tell me that they're going to arrest me. No, there's actually a state law that says you can carry Narcan.
Yes.
Carry it. Put it in your purse. Put it in your glove box.
Yep.
Keep 2 or 3 in your house. Put them everywhere.
Yeah.
Heck, I have 4 in my truck.
Yep. I've got some in my car. My son keeps some in
I'm
his
pretty
glove
sure
box.
I have some at home as well.
Yep.
Yep.
Because you just never know.
What are some of the key words that you found keep you going for yourself? Whether it's fighting the drugs on the street to recovering for yourself.
God, my family. That's one of the key things right there that just keep me going.
Yeah, for real, it's God for me. Like, I had a spiritual experience in a jail cell that I realize this is not the experience that everyone has, but literally just took away my desire to use. So I feel like knowing that, it's my responsibility to turn around and try to show people that there's a better way, that life can be lived differently, that you don't have to be a victim to this addiction. You don't have to be, you know, stuck in the same cycle of guilt and shame and using. You know, there was a point where I was convinced, I was resigned to the fact that I was going to die with a needle in my arm. And that's not at all what my future looks like now, you know? So, yeah, God is key in my life, and service work, trying to spread that message of hope to other people.
For me, it's like these people sitting right here next to me. It's hope, because my job is very, very taxing. Because I see, we were just talking about Tyler, super
Man.
intelligent guy,
Intelligent.
super brilliant. I had
ways.
interactions with him multiple times, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and, you know, the last time I had interaction with him, he didn't come out of it. But, you know, and that beats you down after a while, and seeing the generational kids slipping into it, following it,
Yeah.
just it breaks you down, but every once in a while, we get some hope. See, people do come out of it, you know,
Yeah.
there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
That's great. And you guys, people should actually applaud all the things that you guys went through and to get where you're at. And I know it's not easy. What, is there any advice you would actually give to an individual trying to break through things like you have?
Don't give up. I mean, if you're really trying to, you know, do something different and you feel like you can't, you know, try to, well, first of all, don't be in isolation. You know, community is a game changer. You know, find some meetings you can go to. Find a Celebrate Recovery. Go to the RCC in Cape. You know, go to, even if you have to do like outpatient services, Gibson is a state-funded treatment center. All of our services are free. Like, we're not gonna charge your insurance. You
Yep.
have to make an
I
insane
don't have
amount
it.
of
Well,
money.
I just got insurance, but I've been going there for years.
Yeah,
so.
and it's free. Like, just don't give up, you know, because the world needs you here. People that are using, you are valued and you are loved and you are worthy of a better life. Just don't give up.
My best advice is, man, every addict, you know, knows and remembers what it's like at some point not to be on drugs, or at some point when they were happy, is to just follow that inside. Like, there's something screaming inside of every addict that just doesn't want to continue doing it, but you can't stop it. And it's just, man, I don't even know how to say what I'm trying to get. It's just, don't give up on the inside calling or whatever that you want to get away from it, because every addict wants to get away from it.
Yeah, they do. I remember feeling like
you're
that.
suffering. It's suffering. I see addicts and I
Yeah.
just see somebody suffering because it's, you know, it just.
And
man,
Jim, people don't realize there's actually high functioning addicts too.
Absolutely.
That's it.
My mother's one of them.
Individuals that do a normal day and normal family, normal life.
I've been doing tree work since I was 18 years old. I mean, off and on, you know what I mean? When Haney kicked my door in, I was a fully functioning addict. I went to work every day. I held a full-time job. I paid my bills.
Yeah.
I took care of everything. But inside, I was, you know, on the outside, yeah, it looked like I might have had things together, but I definitely did not.
But here's the thing too, addiction is a progressive disease. It gets worse, never better. I
Exactly.
can remember points in my life where I had, you know, a great home, I was married, my 2 kids were there with me, I worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield, you know, like I had my husband at the time had a good job, and we were lost in our addiction.
Yeah.
And just steadily over time, those things just fall by the wayside, you
Yep.
know, so it
Yep.
is definitely
does.
progressive, and if you can maintain
For a
for
little
now,
while,
you
you,
probably won't for long or
no,
forever.
It'll all come crashing
you know?
down. It always does.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's one of those things, like, I know people don't believe me, because, you know, I'm a cop, right? I'm the bad guy, right? You know, the guy that's
You
dressed
ain't
in
the
blue.
bad guy.
But I tell people all the time, like, I understand more than what people give me credit for.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk, you know.
You're human.
I won't judge you, you know, yeah, I mean.
You're not just a
I-
shield.
Yeah, and I respect, I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy walking away from it. But I do care. I do want to see you beat it. And I'll do anything I can to help. As long as you're willing to fight, I'll stand next to you and help you fight.
I'll vouch for it.
I was just gonna say, even what you just said there, I mean, can you imagine if they did a campaign? I mean, I'm telling you, I have to believe that the many people I've met through the years that are hit rock bottom, and they just, that they need to reach out, but they just don't have that trust.
Yeah.
The only creative campaign, just
Yeah.
say, look,
Yeah.
I care, you understand this well, and yet, you work 60 hours a week, how can you put another 20 for that one person?
Absolutely.
Hey,
There's a book
You know?
called Chase the Lion that we're reading, with my leaders, it's about a ripple effect in someone's life, but a pastor wrote this book. And it is, it's about who can create this ripple. And you hear this, right, this is one of those stories you see on TV and they make movies out of. Because where you were at, and because of his follow-up,
absolutely.
changed your life.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
gonna change lives.
Yeah.
So how do you create a campaign? Money, time,
Yep.
somebody has to trust, somebody's gotta build that bridge.
Absolutely.
Here you are, I know somebody can help you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's,
He will.
yeah,
He's right there.
exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's,
Does anyone else in the audience might have a question? Okay. One of the things that I would actually ask the panelist is, aside from trying to educate folks about drugs and about your own experiences and about dealing with trying to go after the bad guy, how do you, can you step yourself away from the drug world, ever?
I mean, for me, it was very easy to do as far as being immersed in it, you know, because I was an active addict for 25 years, and then I go to prison for 2.5 years, and I come out and I've never once relapsed. Like, I just completely never looked back. It was easy for me. However, at the same time, I turned back and began working in that field so that I could hold my hand out to the next person still suffering. So am I truly out of that
yeah.
lifestyle?
No.
I mean, I'm not going to go hang out in a trap house, but I'm
Right.
definitely going to say, hey, if you're struggling and you're high or drunk and you need to get to a meeting, let me take you. Let me
it's
show
a
you
part
where
of
to
your
go.
life.
Absolutely.
It's
I
part
want to
of your
show
life. It always
everybody,
will be.
you know, that there is recovery out there. And it's not just for me because I've been given some great opportunity. I took the suggestions of the people that went before me, and so I just hope to be that for the next person,
Yeah.
you know?
And does it go off what you'd said, not to isolate yourself?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it goes back, like we had the panel on PTSD, and that was one of the things I talked about that helps me with so much is it helps me with my own problems by helping other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guessing it's kind of the same thing.
Absolutely.
You face it every
Absolutely.
single day.
That's why you see addicts turn around and try to help addicts.
And
because,
the-
you know,
And the hard
PTSD
thing is,
or
while you-
whatever, you know, it's not the same, but you know what I'm getting at, you know.
hard thing is, like you'd said, Jim, is that, and you guys know, is even while you're doing that good deed or that sense of trying to give, you go through that same hurt too.
Yeah.
As you guys all talked about losses and things like that.
Right.
It's something that you constantly have to deal with. It's almost like a trust situation, but yet you're let go in your trust finally.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, it's brutal working in treatment and seeing, like I said in the very beginning, I work at the women's program at Gibson, and you know, it's like you said, with seeing people in jail for an extended period of time, and they're doing so well, and they're
Oh,
doing
yeah.
so great, and then they
Mhm.
leave, and they just go back to what
And-
they've always known, and that's just, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking, but you just
It
can't
is.
ever stop trying.
Well, I would say the obstacles are in front of them because they're going home out of there, back to the same environment, whether it's the family,
That's-
whether it's friends, whether it's other people, because
Yeah.
they have no other means as far as
Man.
money to help support them or keep them up with a roof over their head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of obstacles there.
There are.
When you're sitting there and there's nothing around you, and you know, nothing but the only thing you can think about is your freedom. It's so easy to be, oh, I'm never gonna do this again. You know, and you even know it in your head when you're sitting there, oh, I'm never gonna do this again. I'm never gonna do this again. But it's easy because you're not around that environment. You're not around those people. You're not in that situation. But then people get out and they get faced with that situation and they crack every time. And it's
Absolutely.
Well,
like,
your whole support system that you do have out, like you're talking about your whole family, is you know, they're addicts as well, and
Yeah,
it's right there in that
every
world.
time for me coming
How
home,
hard
it
is that
was
to get away?
here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that was my coming home. Oh, here, go ahead and throw your life away again.
And the
you know?
craziest
Like,
part is, if you're anything like me, while you were sitting there, and because I had done many little stints in county jails, you know, like a month or two here, month or two there. So if you're anything like me, like while you were saying that in jail, like I'm never going to use again, you probably could have passed a lie detector test because
oh
you
yeah,
believed
because you
it with
truly
all your
believed
heart.
it. You truly believed
And
it.
then you get out and go around the same stuff, and you're
Yep.
just right back in it.
Yep. My mom and dad or my brother or whoever, they'd be there to pick me up and, drugs in hand and,
Yeah.
picking me up from that facility, and I'd already relapsed before I even left the parking lot, So that's had maybe that influence not been there as soon as I walked out of the door, maybe I'd have had a chance, further back in life, but it's easy to sit there and say you're not going to do all that no matter what, and then as soon as you get out and you get that put in your face, it's two different things. You really got to want it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and I
you
will
gotta
say,
want it.
absolutely, and I will say this too, on that note, after doing my 2.5 years in prison and getting out, like my mindset was so different at that point. I just knew that I was not going to go back to the way that I
Oh,
was
yeah.
living. I was not going to have because I took part in a Christian discipleship ministry when I was in prison, and it just changed my life. It was a reentry program. I was just, I really put in a lot of work to make sure that I was not going to go back to that lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't, I really cut off for the very first probably year so many people, probably everybody that I ever used to run with, ever, And I just really dove into the recovery community and meetings and, my faith and church. It was just, you have to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Me with, this go around. I'd been in recovery for over 10 years. And then fell back into it, and then Haney come knocking on my door.
That is
And,
such a cool story. That is just, you're right. They should make a movie about something like that.
It put me back where I wanted to be. I had, and I sat 6 months, 6 months in county jail. Ugh. And I did over a year in prison before, and then, I talked about being in a group home, so I've done this throughout my whole life, but that 6 months was the absolute worst time I've ever done in my life. I mean, it was absolute misery. Being away from my kids, last time it was 13 years ago, so my kids were, little, so the bond wasn't as strong. Of course, they were my babies. I missed them, but, I didn't have that bond. And then, of course, I loved my wife, but of course, we've been together 19 years now, so the bond is even more strong. 6 months away from all that, it's just like, I really got to reflect on, like, man, like, how did you even end up back down that road? Like, what, so it definitely just helped reassure, the life that I want to live, so it's.
Do you guys?
Haney was a blessing. Haney was a blessing.
That's really cool.
for
I've been
sure.
called a lot of names.
He's
Usually
an
that's-
angel.
That's really
He was
cool
an
that you
angel.
can
That's
see it
great.
like that.
He's an angel, man, for sure.
Do you guys at times set yourselves goals now?
Oh, all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like I
And
just got my MADAC, which is Missouri Associate Alcohol and Drug Counselor.
Congratulations.
I'm,
Super
thanks.
awesome.
Thanks. I'm
Super
going to be
awesome.
in January switching over to the primary inpatient counselor for the women's program, which is insane.
Super
And
awesome.
so now I've set
Congrats.
the next goal, which is to get my CADC in a year, which is the next level up. Like you have to have goals. You have to.
Super cool. That's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jim, what wise information would you give to people about the whole substance abuse?
Again, I know it's a hard thing to get away from.
But he's gonna come knocking on
But-
your door.
That's right. Either,
I'm just joking. No, I'm
either
just
it will take everything from you,
Yeah.
or someone
Man.
like me is going to knock on your door,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going to give you a choice about it.
joking.
Um,
You ain't gonna like it at the time.
I would much rather be the one to knock on your door than to come,
Pick you up,
yeah,
put you in a bag.
to come wait for the corner to come
Yeah.
put you in a bag.
Right.
But, you know, fastest way to see me without a smile on my face is impact kids with it. I'll be there as fast as I can. But on that, I mean, know that we care. We really do want to see everybody succeed. You know, nothing makes me happier than to see this guy on a city truck when I'm driving around town.
Yeah.
And I think, as you had said, and you guys all say, it's a matter of opening up, letting people know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
letting people know that even addicts are people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
humans. We're all
and
humans.
and there's hope. There's hope. You know what I mean? No matter how bad you feel, judged, because most addicts, you know, especially if they get sober and realize what they've really been doing, you know, then they really feel like judged. But just know that there's help, man. Like there's, you know, I encourage anybody who's going through addiction and really struggling with it. I mean, I encourage anybody just to go to church or, you know, Gibson or anywhere to the cops, anywhere. There's help. You know what I mean? There's help. The people ain't just out to lock you up. There's help.
Right, and
You
the
know?
RCC is such a huge asset. I know it's in Cape Girardeau County, not Scott County, but, you know, it's a hangout spot for people, that are just trying to do something different with their
Yeah.
lives, who just need, you know, a tribe of people around them that are trying to do that too.
I see familiar faces every time I go there, and they're just people I've just met, just going there. And every time I'm like, hey, what's up? And we kind of chit chat and, you know, so yeah, I encourage anybody and everybody to go to Gibson. It's an awesome
Thank-
place.
It still goes back to that early part of the children, to get to them, because of that proactive movement, and, you know, for those kids to learn to trust that officer, so that child can go, I can tell you something,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the way the world is right now, you know, when I was a kid, they bring in the fire truck, you wanted to be fireman. When you was a police officer, you wanted to be that police officer.
Yeah. Yep.
Today, it's like the schools don't want to do things because it's liability and it's crazy. But it's still, you know, even here in the church, if we can't get to them in the schools, then we gotta get to them here. And how many churches have 30, 40, 50, 60 kids that can bring somebody in? That's what I'm saying, is my responsibility, is not just preach that Bible, it's to put feet and hands to them.
yeah,
And I think too often, even in churches, thousands of people every week are gathered. They still can make an impact, and I tell them, every fourth person, obviously, some kind of abuse or domestic violence.
right,
So for years, they swept that under the carpet. So there's a medium we have, a platform, to be able to get, we can't get schools, and we gotta get into places where.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we can reach them.
Yeah, so, you know, that's what I see part of our thing is learn and teach these kids to trust. So their mommy and daddy are not fighting, they'll trust somebody. They'll
Sure.
get something
yeah.
restored.
Yeah. Yeah.
On those
Absolutely.
words, I'd like to thank the panels, and also like to thank you guys as far as listening. And
I'd just like to say that we do have a
So they're going
Celebrate Recovery here
Thursday nights.
Thursday nights at 6 o'clock. and
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you guys very much.
Yes, you're
Absolutely.
welcome.
Thank you.